he asked me what games were my worst games up front. He said, what game did you guys play the worst? And I was like, oh, easy, Tennessee, this game, that game. And he was like, great, let's start with Tennessee. And he pulls up and he screen shares it, and we're watching my guys against Tennessee, and I'm like, this is so embarrassing. This is embarrassing. Like, we look crazy. This guy's supposed to be in this gap. This guy, and his whole point on that was, which he told me later, he said he wanted to see how well my guys played with technique when it all hell was breaking loose. He was like, is the technique flashing? Is it showing up? Are the things that you're coaching showing up in really, really hard times and settings? He said, because if they can show up in those hard times, it'll show up even better in the good times.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach, what's happening, man? How you doing?
Man, look, long time no see. Things have been good. Business is booming, as they always say. Football don't stop, baby. So I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm good. A little bit has changed since I seen you last. I know you're kind of jumped into the NFL and have a new addition to the family, man. So congrats on both those things. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, no doubt, man. But look forward to kind of talking about your journey. And so let's go ahead and get started with that. First things first is, when did you know you wanted to be a part of this profession?
It's interesting. So 2020 happens, right? And everybody knows that their lives got affected in different ways. But that was supposed to be my draft class. I'm not saying I was a world-class, college football player by any means, but I wanted to play in the NFL, and I thought that was where I was going to end up. Now, God has other plans, and he laughs at our plans when we try to tell him our plans. So I'm coaching in the NFL now when I thought I wanted to play in the NFL back in the day. Yeah. I reached out to a couple of my coaches because things went sideways. I wasn't getting any calls from any scouts, and draft day had passed on. And one of my mentors, Marcus West, he called me and he was like, look, dude, I've got a GA role open. I think you'd be great for it. PJ always says you'd end up as a coach, so come on and coach for me. I kind of like looking at the phone like, oh my gosh, everybody kept saying I'm going to be a coach. Everybody said I'm going to be a coach. And I got the opportunity to do it. I prayed about it. I talked to my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. She was like, just take a swing at it. And, we've been in it ever since. So I'll never forget calling Joe Rossi, who's the DC at Michigan State. And he always said, call him before I got into coaching. And it was kind of like a de-recruitment almost to see if I really wanted to go do it. Because he was like, this is how hard it is. Yeah. This is what it requires. This is the type of man that you need to be if you want to do it right. And after that conversation, I think I knew it was the job that I needed to do. And at the time, it really necessarily wasn't what I wanted to do. Yeah. So it's always interesting how I got in it, but now I'm hooked onto it.
Yeah. What's really interesting here is, I think anybody that plays football, I think definitely beyond high school, kind of goes through this period right after you get done for the first time, and it's a tough transition because you've been a football player for so long, and it's hard to hang those cleats up. And I think sometimes it's easier for other people. They see the writing on the wall a little bit earlier. Like myself, mm-hmm. I'm looking at my senior year. I'm like, man, I got about 90 yards rushing so far. I'm probably not going to play in the league. So it was still tough for me. But as you're sitting here in the spring, after your senior season, you're saying, man, I'm looking at my phone, I'm waiting for everything, and all of a sudden this coaching thing pops up. Was it difficult for you to kind of let those cleats go and say, hey, I'm still be around this game, but it's going to just be in a different fashion?
Yeah, 100%. I drove actually to Kalamazoo, Michigan from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I got the call sometime around driving from Kalamazoo, Michigan, where my now wife was. She was at Western Michigan when I was driving home to Maryland. So altogether it was a 19-hour trip. And Coach West called me at some point, during that transitionary trip. And I just had a whole lot of time to think, a whole lot of open road. Nobody was out there because of COVID. And I just drove home and I kind of chomped on it. And it was like in that small span of time, I had to let one dream die and let another dream kind of be born.
Yeah.
And Mike Tomlin, I don't want to butcher the quote, but I remember reading up on this. I think Mike Tomlin said something along the lines of that it was something about not letting yourself stop dreaming as you once did at some point. It was some quote that resembled that. So I kind of got excited when I read that quote, and I was like, well, I'm going to transition this one dream and take all this fuel and this passion and take it to this next dream. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So that was something that kind of happened. I had to let it all die and kind of be born kind of within 24 hours, which was very tough. And I never really let it go. When I got down to Charlotte, I was probably that coach who everybody knows, who's in the cleats, running around, who thinks he could still play. Yeah. And I still got the cleats on now, but I know my place. All my guys right now on the D-line know. They're like, hey, Coach Debo knows how far he can take this thing.
That's right. That's right. Now, that de-recruitment call you talked about, I think anytime you can interject that significant other into the story, into the podcast, I try to do that. Now, obviously, that was important for you to hear that, because, as much as you think you know ball coming out of college, you realize you don't know nothing, and you realize that there's a lot going on behind the scenes as a player that you didn't even realize. Guys were up there at 5 a.m. They were up there till midnight, all the kind of things that go on behind the scenes. But that significant other also has no idea what the business is about, and it heavily impacts them. So, as you got that de-recruitment call and he's telling you about the hours and the grind and the sacrifice and the low pay and all the kind of stuff that that kind of goes into the business, how did you relay that to your now wife?
She was so excited at first before I got the call from Coach Rossi. She was like, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and you're going to go do this and you're going to go do that. And I called her back and I'm like, sweetheart, look, over the next year, maybe 2, maybe 3, like, you're probably not going to see me if I'm going to go GA.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you mean? And I had to break everything down for her. So originally, we were supposed to move to Charlotte together. And this isn't really a thing that we talk about often. We broke up when I left and I went to Charlotte. Just because she was like, hey, you go do what you need to do, set yourself up. I'll go take care of what I need to here. It's COVID, I'm going to be around my family for maybe the last time if we do end up getting back together and this thing works out. So I was like, hey, just let me take a shot. Yeah. I'm going to go take a shot at this thing. If it works out, then let's go. So we actually ended up getting back together right before I got the job at Oregon, because I told her, I said, I'm going to go and try to ascend and get to another spot. I said, I don't know where it's going to be. But I looked at her and I said, you got to promise you're going to come with me. I said, and if you promise you're going to come with me, I'll make it worth your while. And she was like, I'll go with you wherever you want to go. And I got a call a week later and I was like, you ready to go to Eugene, Oregon? So she's from Detroit. And it was a heck of a transition for her. She was like, what do you mean? Is this a joke? Like, I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. Like, we're moving to a state we both never been to before, on a coast we have no family. It was just us.
Yeah.
So it's even tougher for, I think, our significant others sometimes than it is us, because we go into work, we build camaraderie with our coworkers, the other coaches. We have a good time. We're doing what we love. But sometimes, like, you've got that significant other in a state they don't know, with no family in the middle of nowhere. And that's where, like, the coaches' wives and just other wives on staff, like, it helps to have that support from them as well. So, it was a very tough transition for us, all the way to the point where we had no legitimate relationship to bringing it back together to me proposing and now us being married. So it was a full swing, man. It was a lot.
Yeah, and it's I think sometimes in smaller rooms, these kind of conversations happen where you kind of can reminisce on those tough times. And I remember dragging my wife all around the country, and we weren't married. And there was her family had some opinions on that. My mom definitely had some opinions on that. And I'm like, Mom, I make $600 a month. Like I can't even afford
Can't do it.
I can't pay it, buy a ring right now. And, just some of those struggles, but, sitting in this position now, it makes us so much stronger in a relationship. Now this is not Dr. Phil here. Well, obviously coaches want to hear about ball, but hey, that's real stuff. That's a part of the profession and part of ascending, and just something that you have to deal with. Now, after your successful career there in Minnesota, you break into the profession, as you mentioned it, at Charlotte. Just talk about that first year as a graduate assistant, where things change, and even from your perspective, bumping down from that P5 to Charlotte, which is a great little setup there in Charlotte, but it's a G5 now at this point in time, and things are a little different. You might hop on a bus every now and again for a football game, and it's just a different vibe. So how was that adjustment for you to break into the profession?
It was tough for me to learn how to conduct myself in an office setting.
Yeah.
You hear some people talk about, I'd rather have a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I literally felt like a warrior in a garden. I'm coming from smashing domes and playing ball, like getting ready to run through a wall for a game. And now it's like, hey, make this 8-box. You're in here all day, break down this film, copy these things, go get this coffee, go get the food for the staff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like when do I get to get back to who I was. Yeah. And what I had to learn was it's literally a time for everything. When you go out onto the field, it's time to work that technique. You can channel that inner competitor at that point on the grass. But when you get into the office, man, you've got to learn how to actually go about your day to day in the right way in order to maximize your time. Yeah. So that portion was tough, not only to talk about that, but then also from a recruiting standpoint, I'm all over the place because I'm thinking, hey, we can go get this guy. We can go get that guy. Well, that guy is committed to UNC and this guy is committed to NC State and that guy is committed to Bama and you want to go after these guys. So I had to kind of learn, okay, who do we have a shot at? Who can we snag if they are committed to a bigger school that we can kind of change their mindset to get them to come to Charlotte? And then who can we empower as a steal that might be seen as a 1AA guy, but we see him as a guy who can ascend to a dominant G5 player. So I had to kind of get my mind more focused from a recruiting standpoint instead of just having them, in the clouds the whole time, as I tell a lot of the other younger GAs and stuff like that. So you got to be realistic. You also have to be ambitious and slightly delusional when it comes to recruiting, but everything was different. It was a full change, a full flip, and then it was COVID. So we got half of our games canceled on top of all that. Yeah. So it was all domino effect tumbling down for me, but I learned very, very quickly.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned kind of like that professional decorum that you have to have in an office, especially from switching that gear. And I remember how wild the defensive lineman I've ever been around in my life. You just got a different person. Y'all are some different cats now.
No doubt.
And that professionalism as a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, I'm imagining you're around that time frame as a GA at Charlotte, around a bunch of other 23 and 22-year-olds that got more in common with you than probably any other coach on that staff, just in regards to age and music and just things that are going on. Like, how do you maintain that professionalism as a professional in that player-coach relationship?
Right. Well, I mean, Marcus West made it easy. He was like, if I find out you're hanging with the guys, you're gone.
Yeah.
So he kind of like he set
the stage. Yeah.
He set the stage and the standard. Like, if I find out you're hanging with the guys, you're gone. These are not your friends.
Yeah.
He was like, you're their big brother. Like, you're their mentor. Like, you're somebody that they can look up to and teach. But like, I don't want to hear about you going to a party over the weekend with all the guys because you guys are the same age. Like, you'll be gone. I'll find another guy. So he set the stage, and that wasn't something that I was too worried about at all because I knew at that point I had to flip the switch. And PJ at Minnesota had taken us through so many leadership just trials and classes and different things of that nature to where we understood, hey, like, these freshmen coming in are your brothers, but you're probably not going to be in the same setting as them. So how do you relate to them without going out and kicking it with them like you're 17 years old, 18 years old? So I think those are some good tools to have in the tool belt just to begin it. But it was tough, especially when there was nothing else to do, to not entertain being around those guys in more of a relaxed setting.
Yeah.
And I had to make sure I drew the line multiple times saying, hey, look, I love y'all boys, man. I love you so much, but I'm not coming over on Saturday night.
Yeah.
I'm not coming over on Friday night. You want to go to breakfast Sunday morning? I'm good. Saturday morning lunch or Saturday afternoon lunch? I'm good. In a public place? Let's go chill. Extra film session? I'm good. I'm not coming over your house to do who knows what with God knows who.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that I stayed consistent in the message that I was giving them, but also in being who I said I would be. I'm not going to be in the same places that they hang around. I'm not going to go out and have a drink with, my buddies or my family when they come down in the same places that they're in. I'm going to make sure I maintain distance from them because I had to maintain that professionalism at the end of the day.
Right.
So I think that was big.
Now, I know you had a plan and it was to go to the league, and very easily you could have went to the league, went to the Carolina Panthers, and then the next opportunity for you could have been with the Seattle Seahawks, placing you from North Carolina all the way to, to the West Coast. But instead you end up in the coaching profession, and you still end up on the East Coast all the way to the West Coast with your next job opportunity. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a shock if you're not really prepared for how the profession could be in regards to kind of that nomadic nature where, let me look at this real quick. You've been from North Carolina to Oregon to Ohio to Minnesota, Arizona now. It's very, very nomadic. This isn't a 5 years, 5 year span. How did you adjust to that part of it when you took that job at Oregon?
Yeah, it was weird for me to be all the way on the West Coast, especially being a Baltimore guy. So now you take an East Coast guy, a true East Coast guy, you take him to the Midwest to play college ball, you take him to North Carolina, which everybody in South Carolina and below is not going to say it's down south. I'm from Maryland, so I'm saying North Carolina is down south. So you take them down there where you got a little bit of Bojangles, a little bit of cookout, you know what I'm saying? I'm eating all that good stuff. Then I'm out there in Oregon. I have no family in the California region, right? Like I'm just out there. And it was so cool to see a different culture and be immersed in it.
Yeah.
Now you've got a totally different genre of football players. From a recruiting standpoint, you're nationwide, so they're like all the way from Baltimore, Maryland. We had two guys from Baltimore all the way to Hawaii and American Samoa. You're recruiting, and you're bringing these guys in, and it was just cool for me to learn. I felt like that was a big growth season for me because I got immersed in something that was unusual. It was weird. It was out of my comfort zone at the time. But now, going back and forth to the West Coast and the Midwest and et cetera, I feel so comfortable because I feel like I can navigate any space given.
Yeah.
I got to work with Joe Salavea out there at Oregon, and he taught me so much just about the polyculture overall and just how welcoming and how loving, and how passionate, he was for the game. It helped me be able to understand who I needed to be in my next step as a DLine coach. So being around him, and then of course, Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, like Joe Moorhead, who's going to be, transformational in the next chapter of my life. And I didn't even know that at the time. I'm around these football masterminds, man, and I'm able to just grow. And it was rough because at first I had to rise to the standard. And like Mario's going to hold that standard now. Mm-hmm. And you better jump to reach it. If you can't reach it, you better find a daggone ladder. Yeah. Right. So I went ahead and I climbed and I feel like I got close to, if not reaching there, by the time I was, finished. And that was weird because it was Lanning coming in, him leaving, and me kind of in limbo. So now you see Dan Lanning coming in, you're like, oh my gosh, like I heard nothing but good things about this guy. And he kind of like, yeah, like you guys have done awesome, but like you guys aren't my guys. Yeah. So it's that tough conversation that's happening as well.
Right.
But Oregon was the biggest, I think, growth period for me just in my life as a coach because I had to go and had to do ball, something that I knew in a place that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Which puts you in, like kind of 24/7 defense mode because you've got to defend what you know and also learn and grow at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you said a couple things about kind of that geographic deal in regards to just different culture. I think one of the special things about that is, I'm a Texas guy, and my early recruiting was going into a Texas high school and walking straight up to a football coach, and he's off. That's what he does. He comes and he hands you a nice recruiting packet with the list of kids and their test scores and their numbers and this, that, or the other. And then the next thing I did was I recruited in Mississippi, where I went to the school and the dude was teaching the class and he didn't have a sheet. And, you know, and I spent some time in Cali and I found out how important family was to maybe some of the Polynesian culture. And, you know, and you just really get to learn that, you know, recruiting is different. I mean, kids are the same, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of same interests, but sometimes the striking points and the way you walk into a building, the way you contact the coach can be so different. And so getting some of that early exposure, I think, is extremely important. Now, I didn't realize this is kind of how your time at Oregon came to an end. So very quickly you found out about what they say, you're not a real coach till you get fired. so
No doubt.
You became a real coach very quickly. Once again, just bringing your wife back into this, you know, how did that conversation go where you walk in and you say, hey, we got this new coach, Dan Lanning, and by the time you're back home that day, you're like, oh, yeah, by the way, I don't got a job anymore.
Listen, it was – so she was paying majority of the rent at that time because she didn't know I was saving for a rent. So I was getting these extra little chunks of change. How Oregon dispersed the GA money was kind of in chunks at different times. I'm putting the money away for a ring and only telling her, hey, I've got X amount of money to pay rent this month. You just got to cover this. And I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to want to beat me up, but she's going to be so happy when it's all said and done. So, you know, we were kind of working it that way. And I'll never forget walking into the door and she was working a remote job. She had a little headset on and all that good stuff. She's actually working for a segment of Nike. And I don't even know exactly what it was, but she was working for a small portion of Nike. And she's like, hey, like, you know, how'd it go with the new head coach? How was your day? You're home really early. That's what she said. You're home very early, like 2 p.m. She's like, you're home super early. I was like, yeah. I said, I don't know if I got fired, but it was in a really nice way. But also he told me, like, you don't have to come back, but like finish strong in the bowl game. I'm like, so like, I don't really know exactly what's going on here. She was like, okay, well, what did he say? And I kind of ran back the conversation. She was like, yes, sweetheart, you got fired. I was like, wow, all right. She was like, you need to take a second? I was like, yeah. So I went and I sat in the bedroom and I kind of collected my thoughts. And it was funny because the first person I got up off the bed and I called was Joe Rossi. And I called Coach Rossi. I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, like, how's it going? You know, you guys had a really good season. You know, I saw Mario left. Are you going down to Miami with him? I'm like, yeah, no, I got fired. And he was like, huh? I was like, yeah, I got let go. So immediately, you know, we started talking about what this could look like for me, what's coming next. And he just gave me guidance. And he was like, listen, like Coach Fleck always says a quote. He says, like you said, no, you're not a real coach until you get fired. He says, every coach is either fired or is about to get fired.
Yeah.
At some point, you have a 25-year career, but on year 26, you could get fired.
That's right.
So he said, this is a part of your journey, but it doesn't define who you are. And Rossi kind of built me up. So I was very, very thankful to have him because he kind of got me to pick myself up by my bootstraps. And my wife was like, well, what do we do next? I said, we pack it, we wait, and we pray. And that's it. So we packed the house, not knowing that we had a job or not. I said I was going to finish up. I said, get ready to ship everything to Detroit if we have nowhere else to go. And then when Moorhead got the job at Akron, she told me to call him. And I was like, no, like, you know, if he wants me to get the job, he'll call me. She was like, no, call him.
Yeah.
I called Joe, and Joe was like, you really want to be a D-line coach? I was like, yeah. He was like, I got a list, but I didn't know if you want to come over here with me. He's like, it's a lot of other things going on. You know, Wilson's going to Nevada. I didn't know if you want to go with him. He was like, I'll call you back in a few days. After a few days, he called me back, and he was like, let's talk some D-line play. We talked some D-line play, and I was headed off to Akron. So we switched the shipping address from Detroit, Michigan to Akron, Ohio, and we started getting our stuff out of the house, and that's kind of how the transition went.
Now, fortunately, you had a relationship with Moorhead, but it sounds like you had a pseudo interview. Wasn't really an interview, but just, you know, he's just making sure you know enough to come in and coach that D-line. What was that conversation like in regards to the X's and O's and just your knowledge base?
Yeah, I mean, he just wanted to know what my progression was in the run game and the pass game. Like, how would I teach these guys? And as we got into it, he had watched me do what I was kind of verbalizing to him.
Yeah.
I would run the scout team, and we kind of had a deal where, you know, our twos would go against the offense's ones. Everybody knows. And then the offense's twos would go against our ones. But I would coach the D linemen. Salavea was pushing me to grow at the time. I didn't know it. I was just doing what he told me to do. But I was legitimately coaching the D-linemen from that perspective because we used our scheme to match up with what our opponent was doing since we were a multiple front. So at any point, I'm coaching the 2, I'm coaching the 3, I'm coaching the 1, I'm coaching zeros, I'm coaching 4 eyes. And Moorhead kind of was like, well, I've seen you coach everything from a 1 technique to a 5 technique across the board. So I know you can do it, but just tell me how you do it.
Right.
After we finished that, he asked me about recruiting. He was like, I know you got sent on different recruiting missions while you were up there at Oregon, getting guys from the East Coast to down south to the West Coast. But where are you most comfortable recruiting? I told him the DMV. Like, I'm from Maryland. That's where I'm most comfortable recruiting to start it off. I said, but if you drop me in the middle of the ocean or you send me to Greece, I'm going to go bring the Greek kid back that you want. And I think that kind of excited him because I told him you could put me on the North Pole, and if you wanted me to bring back a penguin, I would. So at the end of the day, it was more about being able to go get the job done in the right way, in the right fashion, rather than where I wanted to go geographically.
Yeah.
So, I told him Akron's a tough place. I'm a tough guy. I said, I want that. So I think he was a little excited. Not many people are jumping and screaming to go to Akron, but I kind of was.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, your wife came through with the advice of the year, obviously, with the hey, you need to call him. And, obviously we kind of do this podcast for you to tell your journey, and our listeners who are navigating a profession themselves, there's some nuggets that happen in your career along the way. It could help guide them a little bit. What did you learn in that moment when she was kind of insisting on you calling him? I mean, because it sounds like if you didn't call him,
it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't have happened, right?
It wouldn't happen. I think as coaches, sometimes we have too much pride, man.
Yeah.
We have too much pride. Oh, that guy will call me. If he wanted me, he would have called me. Man, that dude is doing head coach interviews, talking to the AD, negotiating his salary pool for his assistant coaches, trying to find an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator. If you want to go be the corners coach for whatever team it is, call the guy and say you want to be that. He's getting 1 million texts, 1 million calls, and he probably wasn't even thinking about me at that moment.
Yeah.
But I think that I shot to the front of his mind when I decided to call him. And I called him once and he didn't answer because I think his phone was on airplane mode. So I had to call him again, and he picked up on the last ring. So when that took place, I think it's about initiative and saying, if you want something, go get it. Don't wait around for it to come to you. And everybody has to use that with a grain of salt. I'm not saying call a new head coach 37 times in one day, but I called him. He answered the phone on the second call, and from there, history kept rolling on. So I think you've got to kind of swallow your pride a little bit and say, if I want that job, I've got to take a stab at this thing.
Yeah. Now, taking this Akron job, this is your first full-time role. The defensive line is going to look at you when they need answers for what they should do, the situation that they're in, in their personal lives, what they should do on third and 3 in regards to stance and, this, that, or the other. You're the guy, and you're responsible for that group. How, especially, let's be real, man, 5 years, a lot of people are still at GA and are doing some off the field role.
No doubt.
You're 5 years into the profession right now. This is year 2, and and you got your own group at the FBS level. What was that transition like? And man, you're having a hell of a career. So obviously I'm not going to ask you this question to set you up, but what is something that you look back at and say, man, I wasn't that dang good at that. That was something I've grown from.
I was unorganized. Well, if you came in my office, you'd be like, what the heck is going on in here? I didn't want to, and this is crazy for a younger guy to say, I didn't want to use the iPad or technology or anything like that. Forget that. I just came from hand-drawn cards with Mario. I'm going to hand-draw every card all throughout the week. I'm going to have them divvied up, put in a file cabinet, and at a certain point, I ran out of space. So now it's week 6, week 7, and my stuff's starting to get stacked up on my desk. This game plan's over here with this game plan. I'm trying to make sure I stay organized as possible. And if I could go back and do it again, I would slowly build the foundation of organization before I move forward with anything else. I just wanted to get to the quarterback and stop the run.
Yeah.
I was hell-bent on doing those things, but I didn't make sure that all my papers were aligned on my desk. I didn't make sure that I separated this game plan from that game plan. Oh, these two teams have the similar tendency. I could have brought that up and said, hey, we did a really good job using this stunt on first and second down versus this team. They have similar tendencies to the people we're playing this week. Let's go ahead and let's utilize that. I just wanted to get home and produce for the defense and help the team win, which is fine, but it's an organizational process that comes before going to do that. And I think it's something that I fight with myself to this day on, is just making sure that I stay organized. But what I've learned to do was the people that are around me, I make sure that they're more organized than I am, and I lean on them for tips on organization. So every GA or assistant, or even, I want to be a head coach one day in college. Every position coach that I'll have around, I want to make sure that they're more organized than I am. So when I lean on them, I can say, hey, how are you organizing X, Y, and Z? I want to be where you are with those things.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people, say the people that work around them should be less competent or lesser in certain areas or lesser all around. I don't believe in that. I feel like you've got to put people around you who won't allow you to fail.
Yeah.
So Malcolm Robinson, who's actually the Kent State D-line coach right now, I hired him and couldn't pay him any money. Me and my wife would have him over for dinner. That's the only thing that we had to be able to kind of look out with him for. But I hired him because I knew he could help me stay organized from a schematic perspective and be able to apply different game plans to future game plans. And he did a heck of a job at that. And then from a technique perspective, I could lean on him and say, hey, does this make sense? Does that make sense? We played together at Minnesota, so I knew he wasn't going to sit there and lie to me. It was blunt honesty, sometimes more blunt than it should have been. I know Moorhead probably heard some arguing coming out of my D-line office between me and Malcolm some days because he thought some things, I thought some things. But when we walked out, we were aligned, and we took care of things in the right fashion. So organization, and put people around you who will not allow you to fail.
That's an awesome answer. I always try to get these little nuggets. I don't think anybody's really hit on organization and honestly how important that is and how much of a better coach it ultimately makes you. And I was fortunate enough in my second year coaching college. I was a GA, so. I would, we'll have a game this week, and like, who's the defensive coordinator? It was kind of a part of putting our game plan package together. And my OC was like, "Oh man, I played him back in 2006, 3 years ago." He pulls out his folder, slaps the game plan together. Yep, they run that bang, 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 and we're gonna do this. And sure enough, we went out there and rolled those guys up, and it was a lot because he had that. And I was like, okay. I need to do this. I need to keep up with this because, this is a guy that's done well in the profession that's doing that. And otherwise you don't know. You don't really know until you got a mess on your desk and you can't find nothing that you need to be organized. It's just not high on your list. But no, I appreciate you kind of sharing that. So you had a year at Akron, and then 23 comes about, and you have an opportunity to come back to your alma mater. And so once again, I was curious about the transitional part of this deal. How did that go down for you and PJ, you and Coach Fleck to kind of reconnect?
Yeah, I got a call, and it was a late night call, and I remember because my wife had COVID, and I was like, "Girl, you got COVID," and this is years and years after COVID was like, hot and popping. I'm like, "You randomly got COVID again," but it never really went away. So I'm taking care of her. I get a call from PJ, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Good. How are you?" And we kind of just talked, and it was random. And he'll call me every once in a while, but never, at this particular time of the evening.
Right.
And he was just like, hey, in the next couple of days, he said, Coach Ross is going to reach out to you. I just want you guys to reconnect. Just talk a little bit of ball. Just want to see what you learned, in the past couple of years. And I was like, okay. I didn't really know what was going on at that point, but he just wished me all the best and hung up the phone. A couple of days later, I saw, as everybody knows, the D-line coach had left. He had moved on, or I think he retired. Then he went to Purdue after that. And I ended up getting a call from Rossi, and he was like, I'm sure you've probably seen the news, on him leaving and et cetera. And he said, I'd love to talk some ball with you. We've got you as a candidate for this job. He said, I'm not just going to give you anything. I know this is your alma mater. I know you care about this place. I know there wouldn't be, a better guy for the job than you. He said, but you've got to earn it. And that's just the type of person that he is. So we sat on a very, 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 very long Zoom call because he's meticulous about the detail. And he asked me what games were my worst games up front. He said, what game did you guys play the worst? And I was like, oh, easy. Tennessee, this game, that game. And he was like, great, let's start with Tennessee. And he pulls up and he screen shares it. And we're watching my guys against Tennessee. And I'm like, oh, God, this is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
This is embarrassing. Like, we look crazy. This guy's supposed to be in this gap. This guy, and his whole point on that was, which he told me later, he said he wanted to see how well my guys played with technique when it all hell was breaking loose. He was like, is the technique flashing? Is it showing up? Are the things that you're coaching showing up in really, really hard times and settings? He said, because if they can show up in those hard times, it'll show up even better in the good times.
Yeah.
He didn't want to hear about the NIU game or the Buffalo game where we're just kicking butt up front. Right. No, he wanted to watch the hard games, the tough games, like the rough spots. And he was like, coach me through this. Like tell me about it, coach me through it, you know, and et cetera. And I ended up being able to do it. Got some things done. I'm sorry. Hold on. My computer battery's died.
Okay, no worries.
We got some things done. And then after we got that Zoom call, we had a couple of more. I got on with PJ. We talked a little bit of ball. We talked some more ball. And then the last call he asked me, he said, how does Shelby feel about living in Minnesota? And I said, I think she'll be okay. He said, no, you call her, you ask her, and you make sure she's okay. So I called her, you know, and she was jumping for joy. And he said, hey, listen, like, it's not done yet. I'll call you and let you know when, you know, we come to a decision as a defensive staff. Yeah. He said, but I want to let you know, Ross is really proud of you. He said, you killed it. I'm really proud of you. Yeah. And a couple of days later, he called me back and he said I was coming home. So it was almost a tear-jerking moment. Actually, it was a tear-jerking moment. I got to call my mom and tell her I was going back to Minnesota and don't put it on Facebook because it's not public yet and all that stuff. Right, but it was beautiful because everybody dreams of going back to their alma mater. Yeah. And at that point, I'm only X amount of years into coaching and I got a chance to go back to mine.
You know, I often ask the interview question a lot. Just, man, I don't think I've ever gotten the same answer in regards to kind of what happens at an interview. And I don't know, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about some of these other jobs you've had. And I'm sure if you did interview, just how drastically different the process is, just kind of within each one. And, you know, that one right there is a very unique one and almost it can obviously you're going to sink or swim on that one because a little bit of it is like, if I'm a coach and you say, hey, coach me up on this bad game, man, I probably would roll through that pretty hard and be like, man, my boy's supposed to have an outside release right here, you know, blah, 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 right, as a receiver coach. And then sometimes you get up there and you have the packets together and you're all, you know, dialed up. And first I'm going to talk about this. And then all of a sudden you get away from that and you know, you're just talking ball as you know it. So I'm obviously you thrived in that situation. Now, man, what a humongous opportunity. Kind of talked about kind of a tearjerker moment for you to get offered that job at your alma mater. And, you know, one of the things that's important to me in this business is it's so fast paced. It's so it can be so brutal at times. Stopping and smelling the roses and just celebrating those little small victories that you have because, you know, in the grand scheme of the thing, you know, a lot of people didn't care that you got that job. You know what I'm saying? Just you know, see it on Scoop that you got the job and they just shrug their shoulders and kind of move on. I mean, that means the world to you. And so hopefully you thoroughly enjoyed it. And just to kind of recap real quick, 83 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks in your career, academic All Big Ten in 2019, Big Ten Sportsmanship Award in 2019. Obviously played under Coach Fleck. So you had a heck of a career, you know, at your alma mater. You get the opportunity to come and coach your position as a full-time guy. So big time. One of the things I did want to ask you about is as you got there, you had a very, very unique role in the newcomer coordinator for the program. Just talk a little bit about that. And, you know, I got a feeling I understand why you were selected for that, but and why you were selected for that role.
Yeah, I think that was something that kind of caught me off guard because Coach Fleck told me about it in a staff meeting in front of everybody else. Yeah. And when he introduced me, he was like, everybody knows who this is, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. You know, it was kind of a joke. He was like, and he's our newcomer coordinator. And I was like, what the heck is that? Yeah. So he was like, you don't know you're our newcomer coordinator, but you are. And he was like, you're going to onboard every freshman and you're going to teach them the do's and the don'ts of campus, the do's and the don'ts of this program. And he said just how to thrive and enjoy college in the right way. Yeah. So I was doing everything from teaching guys where to go get a haircut, to, hey, if you want to bring your girl out on a date, but you only got $50, $20, $30, take her over here. If you're using that big NIL check, you know, take her down the street over here. Yeah. All the way to, hey, like, if it's midnight and you're supposed to be home sleeping and there's an opportunity for you to go do something else, like you probably should turn your back to that and you should walk back where you know you're supposed to be. So it was hard conversations that we had that were a little bit more explicit than that, being honest, detailed, letting them know, hey, these are opportunities that you'll never get again as a college athlete. Don't mess it up. But then it was some fun things too that came along with it. And I got to teach them about just the roller boat culture in totality and how it applied to me in my life and the things that it can change for them in their life. And it's actually really cool what Coach Fleck does. He takes the guys through past years in the program. So they would know now at that point, like what we went through in 2019 and how we won 5 out of 6 of our one possession ball games. And that's the reason why we won 11 games that season. Yeah. So now their wheels are turning. And yeah, they know like Antoine Winfield Jr. caught an interception in double overtime to beat Fresno State. And, you know, Rashad Bateman caught 4 touchdowns in this game. And they were probably watching it as a lot of them Minnesota kids and et cetera. But they didn't know that one possession ball games were the reason why we went 11-2. Yeah. And they didn't know that, you know, the turnover margin was the reason why we won this game, or the explosive play battle was the reason why we won this game. And I took them through 2017 to 2023, and we talked about every year and why we won and why we lost, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to apply some of those teachings to the games that they were going to play that year. Yeah. Man, it was awesome, man. But the process of being able to do that, I think, was thoroughly preparing me for the next upcoming year in which Coach Fleck named me assistant head coach. And now I was in front of the team even more. But, you know, I'll say this is another kind of tidbit of just advice. You never know what the person that you're working for is preparing you for. And sometimes it's confusing, but you've got to be able to give yourself a little bit of grace and give them a little bit of trust and understanding that the work comes before the result. So I didn't know I was going to be the assistant head coach that next upcoming year, but I was talking to this group of freshmen, and the next year before games, I was talking to the whole entire team. Absolutely. Which was special, man. I'll never forget those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Just kind of in conjunction with that, obviously this is your story, but I do want to interject. My last year before I joined this role here at the AFCA, I was a special teams coordinator. And man, when I got done with that season, it was so special. We weren't very good. We didn't have a great season or anything like that. But man, it was so special because I realized how I don't know, unique it is, I guess, to be the guy to stand up in front of not just your receiver group or not just your D-line group, or not even just, hey, you say a couple things in front of your side of the ball. But man, you got every position group in your meeting, and they're all listening to you, and not from a power standpoint, but just from, you know, preparation standpoint. Like, you know, just being able to get in front of those guys, you know, as freshmen, and kind of, you know, I don't think you don't come off as a guy that lacks confidence, but build confidence as a speaker. You know, build confidence as, hey man, I can't get up there and ramble. I got to get up there and hit my points and yada yada yada. And now all of a sudden you get promoted, and you're standing in front of the team before a big game, and you're the guy that's got to get them going. And, you know, I got a feeling about you that you probably would have did a good job regardless, but it definitely, it definitely would have helped, you know, it definitely helped that you had some of those opportunities to do that.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. And it's unique what Coach Fleck does, because he gives assistant coaches opportunities to speak in front of the group at different times in the year. Yeah. So, you know, if a coach is from Illinois, maybe he's a Chicago guy and we're going to play against Northwestern. Like on a Thursday, he'll have those guys roll up there and they'll have a chance to basically run a team meeting. And it happens every once in a while, sporadic. He picks it. Sometimes Coach Fleck runs it. Sometimes other guys run it, you know, but he gives people a chance to develop and grow. And I think that that's so special and unique. My mother would always say, and you know, we grew up in church, my mother would always say, the pastor who shares his pulpit is always going to be blessed because he's developing somebody else to go on and minister to other people. Well, that's exactly what Coach Fleck was doing. He was developing other coaches to go on and minister in their own programs or become a DC or become something else and, you know, kind of grow from that perspective. So I didn't know at the moment, you know, what he was doing. But then that next year, get in front of the whole team, I had the confidence to speak in front of them even more, because guess what? This freshman class that's sitting in this row right here, they were listening to me the same way all last year. Yeah, right. So extra 70 guys, whatever. Let's go ahead and let's do this thing.
That's right.
Which really helped me out.
No doubt. Now, the assistant head coach, kind of like quality control jobs and analyst jobs used to be, where, in one school you're breaking down you're doing football. The other school it's a GA role. Like, what did that role mean for you in Minnesota, and how did you use that to kind of continue to develop professionally?
Yeah, I think that at that point when Coach Fleck brought me in and said, "Hey, you're the assistant head coach," I knew what it meant, but I didn't know what it would entail.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "Do you know what my job is?" I said, "No." I'm like, other than being a head coach, like I didn't know what he was asking. I'm like, "Yeah," but he was like, "No, not the head coach stuff." I was like, "Then no." And he said, "As a coach, my job is to take you from where you are and get you to where you want to be." He said, just like a stagecoach in the 1800s, like a stagecoach took people from one place and they got them where they needed to be. He said, "That's my job." So he looked at me and he said, "You want to be a head coach, right?" I said, "Absolutely." He's like, "You want to be a head coach sooner rather than later?" I said, "Heck yeah." He said, "You're going to be my assistant head coach." So I'm like, kind of like hip, hip, hooray. Like, I'm extremely excited. He said, "Your job just got 20 times harder." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're going to recruit on both sides of the ball. You're going to be involved in this. You're going to be involved in that. You're going to talk to the guys on Thursdays before games. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. When a guy has a problem on offense, defense, special teams, I'm coming to you." I was like, "Whoa. Okay. All right." So he put these things on my plate, and I just went after them. And it was so many different things. And at one point, he sat there and, he was talking to our director of player personnel and the GM and, some other assistants in the room. And he looked at me and he said, "Winston, what should we do?" I was like, "What the? Like, you're asking me now?" I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, "You sure you want to ask me this?" But like, I understood at that moment it was another chance for growth. It was another chance for development. And it wasn't a big, decision that needed to be made. I think it was something about like our kids camp.
Yeah.
But I told him exactly what I thought. I was decisive. And he looked around. He said, "That's what we're doing. You guys heard the assistant head coach." And he was like, "All right, let's go." And we got up and we left. And I was like, he just let me call a shot. Like that was super cool. And, it made my heart warm, man, because this was my head coach. This was the guy that I played for. Now I'm the assistant head coach in the same program, and he kind of just let me go ahead and make a call. Now listen, with great power comes great responsibility, because Lord knows if I ever messed anything up, he was going to be the first face that I saw knocking at my door. So I knew that, right? But it was such an amount of gratefulness that I had to be able to develop in that role. I knew that no matter what, after that year, I'll be one step closer in my journey to becoming a head coach or even just a defensive coordinator, all in all, when it was said and done, because of the responsibility he placed, upon me. So it was a blessing, man. It was awesome. It was a blessing.
Well, one of the interesting things is I've been able to do this podcast over the last 7-8 years is I've gotten a lot of head coaches on, and they talk about, and I need to make like a montage of all the times head coaches says this, "Man, you think you're ready, you're not ready until you're sitting in that chair." It's something along those lines. And it all follows with, man, you make 200 decisions a day that impact, 200 people. And it's just all day you're making decisions and just been empowered. Yeah, it was a kids camp, but man, you made a decision that was going to impact those 100, 200 kids that was coming to that camp and everybody that was around. And it's, that is kind of one of those first steps, because typically in the past, your decision impacted your position group or your side of the ball, but not necessarily the whole team. And so that's awesome that he empowered you with that. And that's great to see it more than just a title. And I'm not knocking any coach that uses it as just a title, but they're all shaped very differently in regards to what the assistant head coaches do. And so that was great that you got to be put in that position. Now, you recently made the transition to the NFL this spring. You started with the Arizona Cardinals as a defensive line coach. But prior to that, you spent two seasons, one with the Jaguars, one with the Packers, doing the Bill Walsh minority. Why was that something that you sought out, and how good was that to do for you?
Yeah, I think that those opportunities were opportunities that showed me what it was like coaching on the next level. I've got multiple teammates who are still active in the NFL, who I've watched go to the NFL, leave the NFL and be done and retire, but I never got that opportunity. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I know I can do it. I've just got to see what it's like. I've got to see what it's like. I've got to apply myself. I've got to see what it's like. Coach Flex telling me about it. He coached for the Buccaneers, and he's kind of describing it. He was always a huge proponent of just pushing me to go do, different things of that nature. But the first time I had the opportunity, I was in Akron, and I got to go spend about 3 or 4 weeks with the Jags in my off time, and it was great. I got an opportunity to, help with breakdowns and help with opponent scouts and be on field and do some technique work with the guys. I built relationships up with those guys to the point where now I'm not just the guy holding the ball on the stick. We're working pass rush pre-practice. I'm telling them 1 or 2 things that I think that they can get better on with conjunction to what their position coach was actually telling them. So if their position coach was saying, if you get high hands on this pass rush right here, fight and go ahead and lift the hands, I'm saying to them, hey, let's get 10 hand lifts right here before practice starts. You heard what coach said in the position meeting. If we can get you to fight and go right here, stop the offensive lineman's feet, lift on the forklift, and then be able to step through, we'll be able to get home multiple times. So let's go ahead and let's get 10 arm lifts right here. Let's go ahead and let's get 10 step throughs right here. Let's swipe right here as a switch up. Now I'm building a relationship with those guys. And I think what everybody thinks about the NFL is they think it's about how much you know. And it's cool that you know a lot, but it's really about how much the players trust you to get them better.
Absolutely.
That's what the NFL is. And even college, but in college, the guys are so, I want to use this in a correct way, malnourished from information sometimes, depending on where they play, high school ball. But in the NFL, it's, can you get me better? If the answer in the box is yes, I'm going to continue to work with you. If the answer is no, you might see the relationship fall off a little bit. So I wasn't trying to, recreate the wheel, but essentially I wanted to go ahead and oil the wheel up and just make it sleeker, faster, and more efficient. Yeah. And if it was 10 arm lifts, or if it was 10 clubs, or if it was 20 rips, or if it was 20 block disengages, I'm your guy, and I wanted to do it for you. So between Jacksonville and Green Bay, similar experiences, different clubs, different coaches, but it was awesome to be a part of those. I think those were just super transformational in my growth. And then being able to get here, I was kind of ready to see, what this club was about versus the other two. But the NFL is the NFL. If you can get them better, they'll love you forever.
No doubt, man. Well, you don't know how fired up we are when we saw that, because I think I just saw you about a couple of weeks before that at the convention on the Skills and Drills field, just doing some crazy work, on that deal for us, and just ecstatic to see you make that leap. Now, one thing I did want to highlight is you were part of the 2024 AFCA 35 under 35 class, which is continue to kind of transcends and be elite, and you're a big part of that. Just being a member and just watching your career, as we kind of talked about it here. Just talk to us a little bit about your experience and why, if you're under the age of 35, you should be applying for this opportunity.
Yeah, I want to tell guys who've applied multiple years, don't get discouraged. I was applying since I was a GA. And really, I look back on my first project that I did to apply, and I was like, that was horrible. So, I wanted it bad because I felt like, if I could get around an elite group of coaches at a high level, I could learn, but I could also kind of prove myself. And I think as I continue to grow, I figured out it's less about proving yourself, and it's more about networking and getting around these guys who are going to be in the profession with you for another 35 years. So I keep in contact with multiple guys that I came in with, but it was like being able to be around these guys. You've heard about them, you've seen them upcoming. They might be in totally different states where you've never brushed shoulders with them. Now you're in the same room and you're like, dude, I know who that guy is right there. I want to go get his contact information because he's kicking butt coaching backers down there at UTEP. Dude, I know who this guy is right here. He was out there at Cal, and he's kicking butt right now coaching wide receivers. I don't know about wide receiver play. I can get on the phone with him, and I can learn about it. Nate Dreiling, we brushed shoulders at Oregon, and then the next time we're sitting in the same room, again, it's at the 35 under 35. So I would totally apply for it. I'm pushing for it because I think that guys don't understand. It's not just the title. It's not just the name, but it's a class, an elite group of guys you can track and you can always fall back on when things go sideways. So I always know really good coaches, consistent coaches, talented coaches, because we got to spend that time together at the convention last year, being a part of the AFCA 35 under 35. So Man, I loved it. I don't think anybody knows other than probably you that I applied year after year. But man, I applied 3 years in a row and I finally got it. So it was a blessing, and I was super ecstatic, and it's hanging up in my office right now to this day.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that part about applying for multiple years, because there's nothing that I hate more than sending out the declination letters out that, hey, you didn't get in, because typically every year there's probably about 135 guys that very well could sit in any of those chairs in there, but we got to whittle it down to 35 guys. And I know it can be discouraging at times, and sometimes it might make you go to the drawing board and tweak. Sometimes those 2 years or years, you mature, you kind of put yourself in a better situation in regards to position wise. And so I think that's important to highlight. And I didn't know that you were going to say that, but that's a great point that you made, man. And once again, little one, congrats on a new addition. Congrats on a new gig, man. And we appreciate everything that you do for our profession. Obviously, I know it's going to be difficult for you to make it to the convention now with the new week in the NFL. But if you guys have the opportunity to ever make it down, man, I look forward to seeing you. Okay.
No doubt, man. I appreciate you. God bless everybody out there. Keep coaching your butts off.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, man. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, brother.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.